Why?
Because we always laugh about it.
What do we laugh about?
When you guys were in London, we were laughing about.
We're live?
She sent me a
Is
text.
Logan good in the
It was
camera
like,
angle? Oh,
he
sweet.
He just called the trash the rubbish.
That's what it's called.
So
That's what it's
funny.
called. What do you put in the back of a car? What's that called?
The trunk?
The boot. The boot. Just put this stuff in the boot, you know.
Or we always just secretly behind your back make fun of you for being British.
That's fine.
Why
It is
British?
what it
He's
is.
not
I am.
British, though.
I am.
He is.
I thought you were Australian.
I was raised there, but I am
I just got really
historically, genetically, full English,
Okay, gotcha.
The next king.
which is surprising because of how tan I am. But
Interesting.
that's the case study for people that think, oh, my skin, I can't go out in the sun, I'll just burn easily. It's like, no, I'm 100%. Both my parents did the genetic testing and stuff. I'll never do it because I'm not giving my genetic data to big companies, but that's a
Can you
separate
name the big companies right now?
23andMe.
23andMe. Look at the CEO. Who is
Yep.
that CEO related
Isn't she
to?
connected
The
to-
Google CEO?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And something with YouTube, too, I think.
Google owns
yeah,
YouTube.
I mean,
Yeah, I know, but there's another, connection there.
there's a few power couples
Yeah.
in those big tech companies that it's like, what's going on?
Because, YouTube has a separate CEO or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But, yeah, episode 11.
Episode.
Oh, 1-1, cool.
Yeah.
On today's 2-2. Okay.
We started with a little bit of a conspiracy angle, which is great.
We're back. Episode 11 of The Associates in Los Angeles with the man who is shaping the vitality of the future, Mr. SolBrah.
Thanks, guys. It's good to be back here.
Glad to have you here. We filmed one
We did
almost
do
a
one.
year ago. And it just didn't come out the right way. And we were just kind of playing around with that old one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we got the new pod going, and now we have you here. And we really appreciate you coming back on.
No, my pleasure.
Los Angeles. Let's talk about you living in Los Angeles. Because Los Angeles doesn't seem like the place that you would end up.
Oh, I think it is.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Why?
it's not, like
The parts of it.
it's not downtown.
Well, I
you
think
know?
you get here, and where we're at, especially in Hollywood Hills, it's it's really nice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's really, really nice here. But then there's the parts you see on social media that everyone talks about, and Los Angeles is going to shit, and California is no good, and blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
So how do we, because you obviously enjoy living here,
Mhm.
right? Why did you choose to live here, right? And, how did you kind of discover, why it was good for you?
Right, so for whatever reason, I don't know why, when I was just growing up and seeing California in the movies and just the idea of it, I've always had this deep connect. I need to go to California. Before I'd ever been here, had never been to America at all. It was just I felt like it was my place for some reasons. And I came here a few years ago, did a big road trip with a friend, and absolutely loved it. Up, Pacific Coast Highway, all of the old school bodybuilders that I had admired
All in
growing
California.
up, all in California.
Yeah.
And the culture itself was just born out of here, Gold's Gym and all the rest of it. So there's, again, that energetic feeling that I had to be here. It just, it is beautiful to me. There's so much variation. You can go to the beach, you can go to the mountains. It is the most beautiful state in America.
I would agree.
Full stop. It's just being governed in the wrong ways right now. And that is a topic that I think we can jointly push to the masses is how do we take back California in a real sense?
Because you come here and it's beautiful. It's nice. I love it and enjoy it. But I see it on social media and everyone's just talking shit about it. So I get this image in my mind. It's California sucks.
That's why I had it in my mind coming here, and obviously, we live in Miami, and I love Miami. It's great, but I had an image in my mind coming here that was probably wouldn't like it. It's homeless, TikTok culture, just not really my thing. But I love it here, man.
So there is that. There's obviously the stereotype for the reason, and the LA person in general. There's a bit of fakeness or a lot of fakeness. But there is also lots of health entrepreneurs, lots of people that are really dedicated to healthy living, which is of course what I like about it. Lots of forward-facing companies, food spots, and general culture is you can mention red light therapy, breath work, and most people are going to be on your
So
vibe.
how do we take back California?
someone more knowledgeable about the political system, which would have to tell me. But it starts with me being governor, I think.
You have my vote.
So that race is starting in a few years, probably not now, but I might do an Arnold and be the immigrant that comes in and becomes governor.
I think that it's really interesting, and it's so funny being here right now and having you on after leaving Vegas. Like, it was so funny. We were talking about it. Like, I couldn't imagine you in Las Vegas, like, at all. Like, I just physically can't picture it. I
try to go across the state line, and I just can't get in.
It's a locked part of the map.
Nevada seems really cool outside of Vegas.
Yeah. Sorry, I shouldn't have said state. It's the city of Las Vegas. But I've driven through, and it's just like a weird. So it's desert first of all, and then just buildings, and one that's already like a bit weird for me. But then the culture of degeneracy, and for sure visit for a while. But like you were there for what? 2 days?
3 days.
3 days, and you were
That
like,
was
I'm
enough.
done.
Yeah, but
I'm done for a decade.
It turned, but I go full beast mode
hard.
when I'm there.
Yeah.
And just kind of, but it's interesting being here and just such a stark contrast and talking about California. Like it really made apparent to me. And obviously, you and I, it's a big piece of what we do and our brand and everything is like this really more clean, organic, vital living. And then I think when I think about taking back California, or really just anything at all, like the health stuff to me is a huge gateway. And I think maybe one of the biggest things that you are doing now and like really shaping the world in a positive way is just like making all of this stuff, like the awareness and the intention to really curate a healthy, vital life. Like that's the beginning of all of it. That's how I started thinking any sort of thought in terms of like, why does the world work this way, is because I had my autoimmune illness when I was 15, and it's just like you go in, here's your prescription, I'm not really super sure, maybe eat better, but it's super vague.
I saw a really good quote about this the other day. I'm going to read it. The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his information and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence at whatever he does, leaving others to decide whether he is working or playing. To him, he's always doing both.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's really on that same wavelength of we're just living, and we're living to the best of our ability in all realms or aspects of existence.
And I think that if you start there and you get the health stuff dialed and you really start feeling what is normal, like good is supposed to be normal, but in mainstream society now, that's not the case because it's just bombarded with all of these things that kind of suppress, your natural expression or natural highest expression of what's going on. And so I think we start there. And I think just a lot of great that you're doing in the world is just making it, like, to me, that's what SolBrah is like making health cool. Make being healthy cool
if
again.
everybody lifted and ate steak all day and like cared about it, their bodies and whatever to a certain degree, just a little bit, like we're conscious of it, I don't think we'd have the problems we have
because their mind would naturally reflect that.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, relating it to the California Democrat government, it's like when someone lifts weights, they inevitably become right wing. Like that's a fact. I'm not just saying that. It's because lifting, in a way, teaches you personal responsibility. It teaches you that success can come to you if you put in the work and you're disciplined, and it's all down to you. You stop looking externally. Like if you actually commit to lifting and eating properly, making sure personal choices are your responsibility and all of that, which is all through the vehicle of lifting, then that translates to everything else. Okay, am I going to rely on a handout for what business I want to do or my income or whatever it is? Then that also just falls in line with the, more right-wing Republican, which is, they have their own problems, but at least moving away from the democratic view of just, it's all good, free everything, and no punishment on, shit behavior in the society, which is like, that's when things tend to break down as a society. Higher taxes and things, like, yeah. But that's, to your point, Nick, it's like a lot of people will think that what I'm doing and how I'm living is like this massive effort, and it's really not, because I see it as just making different choices. You have a choice to make every time you go to the fridge, every time you go for a walk or don't go for a walk, or you get outside versus staying inside. And I'm not necessarily doing anything that's like this super high level, impossible to do, that costs lots of money. It's just like there are ways of living healthily and that don't require you to really do much other than stop doing the shit that's harming you and taking personal responsibility. And you know, that's easy to do. If you think that it's hard to do, then it's going to be hard for you. And that goes for everything. It just comes down to if you have the belief in yourself and you have the switch in your head that turns on. I can make the change. I can have responsibility for my life across all realms. And that's what I want to communicate with, you know, the stuff that I'm doing, because I took myself from shit results in some things to, you know, more success in, you know, more realms.
When you started the brand, was that always the mission, the goal, the message?
Mm-hmm.
Or were you just doing it out of fun or whatever at the start? You know, how did that like really begin?
So at the start, it was fun. It was shit posting. It was, I would say, partly a waste of time with like political BS online. Like we all, we kind of, everyone's had a stage where they try and like, you know, talk shit to their politicians online or whatever, or against other people that don't share your viewpoints. Like, oh, you're so silly. Like, don't you know that these stats show this? And that's, you know, maybe it's important to some degree, but it's like that doesn't get you anywhere. The only thing that really makes change is when you focus on yourself rather than just like telling other people what to do when your life isn't really in order. And that was what, you know, mine was. I was working a job that wasn't where I wanted to be long term. I was finding myself exploring these ideas and I knew what I wanted to do, but I wasn't really actualizing them. And I don't think there was a pivot point other than, I would say, around the age of 25, when I was like, if I don't change what I'm doing, I'm going to become a worthless piece of shit. Like, I've had like that exact thought, and I sat down and I wrote that in my journal, and I was like, if you don't become serious about what you're doing and how you're spending your time, extrapolate that. What's that going to look like? Mm-hmm. Around 25, things start to shift as a guy, as a young male. But before it was like, oh, you're going to uni, you're going to do great things. Like, people are excited for your potential. But there's a shift where like around 25, especially, the brain matures. So like you start to just view the world in a different way, like very vividly.
I can feel it. I can feel that. I'll describe it because every year, like, I think about when I was 20 or 21 and some of the absolute stupid shit I did. And it's just like each year it's like I get a little bit less of that impulse. Like, probably shouldn't do that, you know? Like, probably nix that and go this way instead because that just seems like a really stupid decision, albeit somewhat tempting and fun. Yeah. Just like a gradual progression of becoming
it's responsibility. It's like taking more responsibility, and that's essentially what being a valid man is. It's like
100%
responsibility for yourself, your income, your friends, to some degree, hopefully eventually your family, but also responsibility to society as a whole, to be not a drain, be a contribution to your community and the people around you. And if you're not that, then like really you're not valuable, you're not going to achieve what you want. And the whole shift that I was, mentioning earlier is like people are excited for your potential. And if by 25, 26, you're not really pursuing anything and you haven't really achieved anything, then you go off people's radar. People like stop. It's very interesting, the shift between like, if you don't have anything to show for yourself at that point, it's tough for sure, but people will start to ignore you. You won't be able to, get the girls that you might want. And it's fair enough because you've had your time to figure it out. And a lot of people figure it out earlier, maybe because of circumstances they've personally gone through. But for me, I was studying and I had studied. I was working these jobs because I was like, I was a furniture removalist, security guard, things like that to hold me over while I was studying. And then after that, I was like, man, I can't keep doing this. And I was working this other office job and I was like, can I really see myself extrapolating for 40, 50 years of this? No, I'd literally rather shoot myself. So I that was the really defining factor. Was like 25 around there. I was like, if I keep making these choices, what's going to happen? So I started changing them, and then, you know, the online shit posting and stuff turned into value production of content. What am I interested in? What will that, like, what helped me? How can I help other people with that? How can I also get my slice of the pie by monetizing it eventually, and like being able to create this thing that I want?
So that's I want to ask you this question following up on that. Like, so now you're here and you're becoming, you know, well known. The brand is growing. People know who SolBrah is, and I think it's really interesting to me because obviously, like, we kind of come out of the same more niche space to some extent. Yeah. And you know, you see some of this like just miscellaneous criticism. I think most of it is just people, like, haters gonna hate. Like, it is what it is. I think most of it is that. But, you know, do you think that in this process, do you think that you've changed?
For sure.
And what does that look like?
If I hadn't changed, that would be concerning, right?
For sure.
If I was still the person that I was 2 years ago, then I'd be like, well, what are you doing? You're not taking on board things like good or bad. You're not optimizing yourself. You know, we should all be in a constant state of change.
100%.
The issue is, if you change and other people don't, other people that were aligned to who you were at that stage, they're going to hate on you because you changed.
And I think that a lot of, and this is just my take, I know we talked about it briefly before we started recording, like, my take on a lot of the criticism, to me, I think it stems from this aspect that, and I've watched it progress a little bit, you know, because when we first became friends, maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago or whatever that looked like, you didn't have this same level of, you were closer to
influence.
Like, not influence. I mean, yes, influence, but like SolBrah was closer to like young degenerate streak Logue Fitz than this idealistic, you know, very mature sort of avatar. And I think that a lot of it might stem from that, you know, is like, because you post all this stuff about, you know, not drinking, not smoking, none of, like, all of these vices. You start removing these vices, and I think that is a huge area where it, like, people, I think it gives them an avenue to hate because it hurts to admit that, you know what I mean? It's easier to to like cast a stone than to really take a good hard look at yourself and say, man, like, am I really living intentionally and and it's something that I really value from your friendship is I know it's always like, you know, I feel like it's it always inspires me to really take a good hard look at myself and decide whether or not some of these things that I do are things that really serve me. And I think that's an aspect of it for a big portion of it.
For sure. There's a couple of things there. The first being that if something pains us, we see a bit of content that highlights an insecurity that we have, or it makes us conscious of something that gives us pain. The egoic reaction is to attack that thing. That thing caused us pain, or that thing caused us to look at something which we've pushed down for months or years. So I'm going to try and attack that thing and get rid of that thing, when really it's the hurt inside you. It's the issue inside you that causes you to feel that hurt. It's not this trigger. And you are shown those triggers. You are drawn those triggers such that you will experience that pain so you can try and fix that internal issue. The other thing, like, I want to clarify, of course, is when I share stuff like, you know, alcohol is bad for you. Everyone knows that. I've had my periods of binge drinking at college, on lads trips in Europe. Like, I've been there, I've done that, and I wonder about the possible damage I've done myself. I don't have that frame of reference because I don't, you know, your beliefs create reality. If you think your liver's fucked up, then it's not going to operate properly. But I know, because I've experienced those things. Was never really big into smoking, but I have smoked. Nicotine use, caffeine use in general, it's like they can be crutches. For most people, alcohol, nicotine, caffeine is a crutch. It is used to get out of the head and make tolerable the shit circumstances of their life. They're looking forward to the weekend. They don't get out of the office life
Right,
out of their head.
If you were excited about it, you'd just do it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to go and drink.
Yeah. And for 95% of people, reducing their intake of that is going to be beneficial for them. Now, is there a space for intentional, conscious use of high quality substances on occasion when you're in the right mind frame? Yes, of course. I'm not going to be that teetotaler, totally like, no, anything is bad for you. Like, you're having some organic red wine with friends after you've just sold your business in fucking Greece, like at a winery. Yeah, have 2 glasses of wine, but like, don't get smashed on fucking Coors Light at the bar at college every weekend, because you're just going to degenerate, your mind, body, and your soul to some degree. And it's like, there's that distinction. SolBrah says like alcohol's bad. It's like, in those circumstances, most people, weed as well, most people use weed to just get out of their heads. Oh, it's making me more creative. I used to think that as well because I used it. But that's not the case. If you're going to smoke a J occasionally in nature with friends and go on a massive hike, and it's like a pathway to some sort of relaxation, and it's not all the time, yeah, that was how the shamanistic cultures on the steppe used to use it, or before battle and things like that.
On the steppe.
Before lifting. So it's like, how are you using these things? Not to mention that, weed especially, and probably all of these stimulants have been bastardized outside of their naturally occurring forms, which makes them a lot worse for the body.
Yep.
Rather than like some organic hand-rolled tobacco that you grew in your own backyard. I could see, I'll partake in that on occasion. But like, it's an entirely different thing. So all of the information and advice that I put out, it comes because I've made those mistakes. And if people get upset about it because of that, then like, I am just highlighting something in them that they need to figure out, and I don't really care. Excuse me.
I also think, and Logan, you and I have talked about this briefly, right? It's because it happens with you. But I also think, and it happens in every niche, because I've seen it all over, but it's people complain that you're selling something, and they get mad that you're like building a brand to go and sell something. And I think you've experienced it a little bit or whatever, and the people that come from like the niche community you're in are like angry, right, that you're selling something and profiting from all the hard work you put in for your brand. And this doesn't just happen in this niche, it happens in plenty of niches, right? Like the Twitch streamers and stuff. Oh, they're selling us something, they're showing, well, yeah, like they're not doing this for free. So can you address that a little bit? I'm curious what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, well, the first transition between my online presence just being SolBrah and selling something was my cookbook.
The infamous
Cooking with SolBrah.
I heard there was a lot of like fake copies of that. Like people added like fake recipes or something.
Yeah, so I'll explain it. So when I released it, so Cooking with SolBrah, your guide to eating with vitality. If you want to learn about diet and stuff, it's still up there on my page. You can find it. But what happened was that was the first time I actually sold anything on my profiles. And for years, I'd put out content helping people, literally tens of thousands of people probably, across the world. And for some people, for you then to offer a voluntary ebook that is giving them like fixing a problem. How do I eat healthy? How do I, like, what do I eat? What do I cook? I had recipes in there. They were very simple. They weren't elaborate. Like that, just the act of offering that to some people to optionally support me and get all of this condensed information, that's offensive. That's offensive to some people because that like it highlights in them something that like, oh, he's making money off this. Like I'm not making enough money that I want. So like, why would someone else value this thing? And one of the comments I got was like, anyone could find this information for free on the internet. Then go do it. Yeah. Then go fucking find it. Like, I don't care. Like,
Facts.
Don't buy my book. Like, but to go out of like, it's like seeing something in a store you think is absolutely ridiculous. You're not going to go into that store and be like, why do you have that on the shelf?
Well, I might go roll through and like get rid of all the like Oreos and stuff.
Well, okay, that's a different story.
I'm gonna get my carbon fiber Batman suit and start tossing out all the bullshit.
Yeah, well, we'll do that when we retake California.
Yeah,
but
vigilante operation on the Impossible Beef.
I saw they're collapsing anyway.
So I was thinking about the guy slicing open packets of the Impossible
amazing.
Beef.
So funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's super interesting. Like, just with I think people, I mean, now there's like there still seems to be somewhat of a stigma, and I think people just don't realize that the internet's here. It's not going anywhere. And no matter what you do, to me, why would you not be portraying that in a vehicle that now, you know, like even like the most niche thing, like it could be literally anything. Like if you're a house cleaner, why would you not be utilizing that as an acquisition channel for your business? Like it just makes too much sense for you to grow your company. And especially if you're doing something that you believe in, it's like, I see it as almost non-negotiable at this point. Like it's just 100%. It's the way business is transacted. And honestly, we saw it in 2020. Like it's one of the few things that can't be just ripped out from under you, you know? Like my heart really goes out for the people who threw their fucking balls on the line for 30 years to build a family restaurant in XYZ city, and then just have it cut from them because of, you know, the
scamdemic.
Misinformation, basically subsidized by the government. And it's just like, it's crazy to me that people wouldn't want to be supportive of that and utilize it as a tool for them to grow. And I think that's another great question I would love to hear from you is, you know, as you are growing and you've done such a great job building out everything that you have, like what's the next step? What's the vision? Like where does SolBrah go from here? What does that look like in 5 years?
Well, within 5 years, I definitely want to have my own like health complex retreats operating, be like the one-stop shop for everything that I talk about: sauna, gym, sunning area, red light therapy, yoga, meditation, everything that I love and talk about, just in the one place, in the kind of style that you haven't seen before. Like all wood, all natural materials, open skylights, like Gregorian fucking monk chants on the radio, no fucking Nicki Minaj and stuff like that. That's like, I want those, probably start with a couple obviously and expand, but soul food is an idea I've had as well. It's like just a little fast food, but you know, healthy, you know, no sea oils. Like
a online internet brand, or like in person,
in real life, just like a little food spot that someone would otherwise go to, you know, McDonald's or something, just to have like your general meats, like make a bowl, everything in there is like organic and all the rest of it. Like there's a want for all this stuff that is obvious by the fact that like my brands are growing or whatever. Like people desire for this kind of way of life, and I think using the internet to pool funds and to direct demand and recognition for brand awareness into real life is like, hey, I'm making this gym, like come to the opening.
Well, I've seen it with like Mr. Beast, for example. Obviously he's freaking huge, but he just filled up an entire mall with his brand new like
burgers.
Burgers.
Yeah.
And dude, it's crazy. And I've heard his Shopify store that sells chocolate. So he's randomly selling chocolate. He's doing like 4 or 5 million a month.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you know, he's grinded for over a decade to get to that point. If you read into how he has studied YouTube, that really like illustrates how dedicated you can be to something like this. 10,000 hours, probably more. But the internet is just like a leverage tool that no matter what you're doing, like you said, Logan, like it's going to help you in some way. You just got to get over that initial hump of like, oh, well, people judge me. And you will get judged. You will get people talking shit about your cookbook, for example. But it's like, where did that get them? And where did that get me? You know, like I've sold my cookbook. It enabled me to quit my job and start doing SolBrah full time. Yeah. And where are they? They're still, you know, hating on various things online. It's like, okay, good for you, man.
Absorb their energy and swallow it and become more of an egregore.
Yeah. The thing is, people don't hate you. They are just like,
if you're nice back to them, they're like, oh, like, man, I was just like messing around or whatever.
I've had that, yeah.
I have a really funny email reply of that. This guy sent me like the most egregious email. I was like, hey man, I hope you're really well. Like, God bless you. Like, sorry, I apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused you. Like, really hope you're doing well. Yeah. He's like, damn, that was actually, gee, I'm sorry, I was being a dick.
Yeah. That's a law, like a principle of how you should carry yourself in the world. It's like a principle of energy and the way the universe works. Is like whatever you put out is going to be what you receive. And you literally can't be harmed. It sounds silly, but you put a force field around yourself if you only put out positive energy. Yeah. Because any hate that comes at you, anyone trying to make you fail, if you just literally wish them well. And I do this to, like in my head, people that like comment on my stuff, whatever. I really wish that they heal, that they are in better circumstances in their life that are causing them to reach out and attack me, because that makes me sad that their life is so shit that they read my stuff, which I'm not like calling people dickheads or like, I'm just putting out information about health really for the most part. But they see that and that triggers them to like be upset and attack me. It's like, I want them to heal from that. And when you do that, there's a Bible quote about it, a Bible verse about it that I forget. But if you only like do unto others what you want yourself to receive, you know, like if you do that, then everything will work out for you.
I'm just like, I was looking at a smirk or a smile from Cam because he's the most devout person I probably know, and it's just I was hoping for a smile there through the Bible referencing.
Yeah. I think on that note, I want to talk about the anonymous factor with your brand. We briefly mentioned it before, but did you start being anonymous because you had a job when you started the brand and you wanted to kind of protect that? Or did you start being anonymous for a different reason? And why do you still remain anonymous? Because I think you'd make a lot more money if you weren't anonymous. You know, I think your brand would go even bigger if you weren't. But that's my opinion.
Yeah.
So I want to know your thoughts.
Well, the start of it was like, I'd always known that fame is a negative, but internet popularity is a positive. The fame of like everyone knowing who you are and not being able to go to the shops, and like actors, for example, they always talk about that. Like they get stalked, they get paparazzi, and like obviously I'm not that level. I'm not saying that I am in any regard, but the principle remains that if you want privacy, if you want to be able to just chill without everyone knowing who you are, like there are hundreds of thousands of people that if you are putting yourself out on the internet, that's just the situation. You're going to put yourself in the crosshairs of a lot of people that might not wish you well, or just, you know, freaks or whatever. And sometimes you just want to chill and not be, you know, known for that or whatever. So it was always just like, okay, what I want is not dependent on me being the thing. Yeah. And I can do everything that I want without it. And it just enables me a bit of privacy. And like, it also, like, I think people can self-insert a lot more. Like, when people look at like giga ultra endurance athletes, like these people achieving incredible things, like it can seem a little bit out of reach because they
not
can't,
as relatable.
Yeah, not as relatable. And you know, I've had that criticism as well, is that like, oh, this perfect SolBrah life, and it's like, it's not. It's just a representation of what you see in social media, and what I think is like good to do doesn't mean that I'm that perfect person, because I'm not. But the anonymous thing is just like, yeah, maybe it would be different if I do it non-anonymous and show everyone my handsome face, but it's just hasn't reached that point yet, and we'll see. But
it's an interesting like conversation, because I think what you present is so idealistic and aspirational in a lot of ways, you know, just in terms of like and it's funny because it adds a layer, being anonymous and not having your face on it, that helps make it more that it's like SolBrah is an ideal, not a person. Yeah. You know, but I also think too, just knowing you and knowing how like intentional you are, there's also another layer that I think could maybe even make it more idealistic and more aspirational, in the sense of like, because I think that there's, you know, so many people, and me included, I think everyone that goes through life as a human on this planet, like struggles at times with, you know, making the right decision, or the decision that really serves them at their highest self. And when I think about your stuff like that, like when I think about you, you know, obviously like we live together and we do all this stuff, but I really think about that. Like that's kind of my, I guess, interpretation of SolBrah. And I think having people that or maybe having it with that, and them seeing you doing those things, like kind of adds something to it. You know what I mean? Like not many people are as like, I don't want to say perfect, but like I think about it. When I think about it, I think perfect, because it's like you come down and stay with us in Miami, and I'm like, you know, I am very like intentional with my health, but I have times where I flip the switch and just go have fun, whatever. But you're
like I did at your age. Like it's not, definitely not perfect, and just take that into account. But yeah,
in bed at 8.
No, it's not that early.
Not that 8. Not that early yet.
9:30 usually. But
It's
I
still
see your point.
really good.
It's really early.
I go to like I'm going to bed at 9:30. It'll be 11.
Yeah.
It just turns into 11.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for saying that. It's definitely not that way in real life. But I'm trying. I'm learning, and I'm putting responsibility into my actions, and doing that just means that the quality of my life improves. The success of my various things improves, and I feel good. So it's like, why would I not keep doing that? And there's a point where if you want to level up, then you got to change how you're doing it. You know, the design of your life is currently set up to give you the results that you're currently getting, whatever you're doing. So if what you're currently doing is getting you what you're currently getting, then you got to do something different if you want more, if you want something better. And you look around and see how many people have a healthy body, a successful business, healthy relationships, healthy family, and still have time for what they want to do recreationally. It's like not many. But what do those people do? They are in bed early. They're consistently working on their things. They have these rules. They're not going out partying and not drinking, doing drugs. And it's like, okay, well then there's probably something to that.
Yeah.
And so it's just this slow changing of your consistent actions that you have to get a higher level of responsibility and discipline to do that. Or if you don't want that, that's fine. And you want the whatever else, but just like you can't have both, really.
Was there, like, over the past year or two, was there something that really you eliminated or have been just eliminated or changed a consistent behavior like that you feel has allowed you to really propel in the past? Because I feel like it's been maybe like the past, what has it been, like the past year where it's like really started kind of growing and everything started blowing up a bit.
Yeah. Well, there's that thing of like, if something's blowing up now, that's the result of the previous years of work.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So it's less like something that I'm doing now, even though it is. But so like recently, I guess in this year, it's been, being really intentional with how I talk, everything I say, only visualizing and talking about scenarios that I want to happen, and raising my own internal level of energy to mirror that of the circumstances that I want to attract. And yeah, it sounds woo-woo, but ultimately the things that you do, even if you have no conscious awareness of that principle and that dynamic interaction, if you're diligently working on your business, you're shaking hands, you're nice to people, you're keeping yourself healthy, and you're not like, you stopped hating on other people, that's raising your internal energetic signature and your broadcast and your thoughts and feelings that are going out, which are then permeating the universe and bringing that back to you and aligning you with a different level of existence. And so you can be unconscious of that, but that is partially what is happening to level up your success. So that's pretty key, and being more aware of that and learning more about that and implementing that in my own life. Definitely using substances less, still have espresso. At the moment, I'm sober September, in the middle of it, and that's been great. If anyone wants to try, I'm sure Sober October is a good one. I think Logan was possibly going to do that, but like no caffeine, nicotine, weed, drugs, anything. And that is like a very intentional, good practice to give your body a reset, get back to like good dopamine levels and a level of creativity that can help you propel the various things. And I've done that a few times, and that's definitely helped me. What else? Yeah, just having more responsibility and like awareness of like this role that I'm stepping into, which is pretty key. And this is like, hey, what I'm putting out is going to either help people, harm people. I got to be aware of what that is, and learning from a whole bunch of people and the amazing people like you guys that I've luckily met, and just being open to new experiences, open to new perspectives. I always want to find the best mindset to have and the best whatever it is. So I would willingly be proven wrong in a lot of things. I'm not beholden to one level of perspective. If something I do isn't working and I'm shown evidence of that not working, tell me so I can switch it up. And then I'm going to integrate that into my vision of reality. And then I'm going to be better in life. And just like really having that central, knowing what I value as well is like getting in an environment that suits me, that I feel good at, cutting off relationships that don't feel good. That's another big one. Energy sinks, people that are not going to be if someone's not solid for you to be with you in 40 years and they show like signs of, whether they lie to you, whether they don't support you, it's like just
get rid of it.
I actually think that's one of the biggest
man.
things is cutting off people that are just bad energy or just not in sync with what you're doing. Yeah. That can throw everything off.
Yeah.
Just like I've experienced that before 100%, even with like employees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I missed like the last minute or two. I had to use the bathroom. But I had a question, and it kind of comes back to your content. And you mentioned it briefly. But are you intentional with the way you put content out on the internet? Is there a formula that you have, or is it just kind of like a free-flowing thing? I'm going to post this today. Like, how do you decide what to post, what to make, and like what that message for today is going to be? Or do you schedule things? Like, are you making things ahead of time? Like, how does that look?
So, yeah, a couple of things there. I've always been a fan of letting the thoughts come to me. Obviously, all writing pretty much when you're in that state where the muse just kind of speaks through you, God speaks through you. I'm sitting down, and I've done this consistently for a couple of years, which is, I think, my, one of my strengths, so to say, is to just like sit down routinely, usually in the morning after I wake up, and write. And whatever comes out, comes out. Same with tweets. I have a thought, I just put it out. Maybe I format it a bit, find a picture or whatever, but then I just send it. I'm not scheduling things. I'm not thinking about when I should post it. It's like good content will perform, like you said earlier. And whatever is speaking to me and is relevant to me at that point, maybe it's an experience I had in a relationship. I'm going to write and sit down and just like figure out my thoughts around this, what I've learned, what I did do, didn't do. And that, I think, because it's coming from my real life experience, it resonates more. It's not like purely academic. Then I'm also taking things from books that I've been reading. A lot of it is like living life and then writing about that. Mm-hmm. Then there's also like, I'll take tweets and I'll expand that. Like you can have a tweet, which is a concept, which is like a platitude or whatever, because it's simple and you just want to get it into people's heads, and maybe it's a reminder and someone read that and something will switch in their head. Mm-hmm. And so that concept can be elucidated in a longer form piece of writing. So I'll go through my tweets from the day before, the next morning, and say, okay, how can I explain this more? Then maybe I've taken that and I've made that into a reel. So it's like I'm big on multi-purposing content. It's just like everything that I've ever written is in my notes app, like just notes, and that's it.
That's what I use.
Sometimes I'll just go back and say, oh, this concept is cool. Like maybe I'll revisit this and add it a little bit, or I'll turn it into a reel, or I'll turn it to a long form YouTube video. So there's a lot of like, because, even if you put out a bit of content, the people that view it, that's not 100% of your audience. Mm-hmm. You can put out a tweet 5 times in a month and different people will view it. Yep. And like, I don't recommend doing that. You want to leave 6 months plus before but like tweets that you've done 2 years ago, they can be redone. There's like not a lot of new followers. Maybe you'll add something that you've learned. So yeah, like all of that for content, it's mostly what I'm interested in and what I'm focusing in. I'll go through stages. Maybe I'll like do more of a bodybuilding spiel for a while. I think it's important to immerse yourself in something for a few weeks to really get your head around that and then share that information. And then also like putting in the effort into learning how to make short form content yourself, video editing. All of that is really relevant because it enables me to put out stuff quickly and cover a wide variety of skills. If I want to make a graphic quickly for my podcast or whatever it is, I have the capacity and knowledge to do that rather than like waiting for my editor to get back to me and so on and so forth. So my rate of velocity of producing content is like, I've had people say to me like, dude, is it like 5 people running your accounts?
Yeah.
Because one, I just spend a lot of time doing it. That's like the reality of the situation. But I also have like just developed a wide range of skills that enables me to make different things, repurposing it in different forms. Some people like reading, some people like watching, and with practice, with everything, you just you find out what works and what doesn't. And on some level, you have to be careful of not performing to the algorithm. Like, you do have to, but then you also don't want to be one of these retards who's like dancing to the latest fucking TikTok trend with like, oh, look at this. Like, you're literally like this dancing monkey at that point. And yes, you have to understand why captions on a short form video, like, they work, and put those in, and not do something that's so out of left field that people don't then view it, because you're not getting your messages across, and that's a failure as someone that's trying to communicate positive things to the world. But you also don't want to let that train you into just being this like pure algorithm monkey. Otherwise, like, you've got thousands of views, but like no one respects you. You're not niched a lot of the time in that respect. And like, if that's your goal, then like, cool, you made a fucking funny video. It's like,
yeah, I think that's because I talk to like clients about this a lot, like people who are just starting doing some of this stuff. And it's like, I love the aspect of like, you don't grow social media, you just grow and then you put it on social media. And then that kind of becomes the framework. I think a lot of people have that flipped. You know, they don't want to continually read and write. They just want like the result. They don't want the process. And I think you do a really, really good job of kind of mastering in that process and just doing it in a really genuine, raw way, because it, like you just said, kind of comes genuine and raw.
Yeah. Naturally. Like you said, just in the morning, you're just writing just thoughts.
Yeah. And sometimes it's, sometimes I'll sit down to write and it's like really hard and things won't come out. And I'll be like, okay, I should probably make a video today.
When you go and, sorry to interrupt, but when you go and like sit down, what's your intention? Are you just, first thing that comes to mind, you're just writing, or is like, I'm writing right now, and like how do you like get those thoughts out there? Because sometimes I'll try to do that and it's just like, I'm just thinking about writing and I don't have a thought to write about, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, like I said, the tweets thing is really useful as like a springboard to go from. But literally you should just start writing. Like, you could have a few prompts of things, and I'm sure you find some online, or like, what is a problem that you've had over the last week, and writing about that is also a good prompt. Or what is a lesson you've learned. But ultimately it's like the practice of like, okay, I sit down at this time and I write, and then just write a page, and literally whatever it is that comes to your mind, write about it and write it. And another writing tip is just write how you speak as a person. Yeah.
Nick, it's really interesting to me actually having this conversation with Sol, because I feel like you are such an executive type, right? Like, you really have like CEO grind set kind of energy. But I think like him, because it was interesting for me when we were just friends, right, and not partners. And like, I was just kind of exploring things. Like, I think you would benefit a lot from like incorporating some of SolBrah's like work mode into what you're doing, and like
the writing work mode.
Like, just maybe, I think there's times when it would, and we were kind of talking about it, like whatever, just like having more flow within your days versus just like output, and having like that creative process. That's like your next, and we were talking about it with Cam, with like videos and stuff like that, like finding that space where it's just the more, I think it would be interesting, something that like when you get that down, it's wraps.
Yeah. So one thing I was going to say is like, when that doesn't come out, when ideas aren't coming and I can't write, that's a signal to, you know, first of all, get off your phone, get off social media, get off your computer, and go live life. And then walking is a massive one. If you're sitting down all the time, like a lot of that, like Niche had a quote, never trust a thought that occurs while indoors.
So this is like, we kind of mess with Nick about it sometimes. Like, he's just like, he's such a hard worker.
Yeah.
And like, you know, Jake and I are like, oh dude, come on, like do this, Like, no, whatever, just want to. And so I think it's like actually a really thing to maybe hear from him. So maybe it gives a unique perspective to it.
I'm big on leisure, right? because
we have to be flaneuring. If you're not flaneuring, you need to start now. Right now. Pick your feet up, take a bath.
Yeah, you should be flaneuring while you're listening to this, really. Have it in your pocket and just walk around. And just like, one of my favorite things to do is, you know, I was traveling a lot over the last couple of years, just go to a new city, a new part of town, and just walk around. Go left where your body wants to go left, listen to your intuition, and you will inevitably have interactions with people, see things, just have thoughts by nature of walking that then you can pop in your notes app with your phone and expand on that idea later when you're writing. And that's a massive one for me.
And like for me, I think of it too as like not being so, because I get in these and you need it, right? You need both aspects of it. Like you need to have like hyper consistency if you want to do great things, right? But anytime I just get way too beholden to some routine or something that I think I need to be doing, I feel like I lose that spark. And I know just from our relationship and other people that like the creative spark to me is like, it's my drug. I love that. Just being locked in and getting stuff out. And it's super interesting. So we've covered a ton of ground. And I think that especially the more mindset stuff just permeates everything. And that I'm super glad we've talked about that, you know. And then the next topic that I have in mind, like we could talk about, and I don't want to bore anyone. If anyone's listening to this, like you already know, and for maybe not, we'll give you a 30-second synopsis, right? Like you need to eat real unprocessed food. You need to get sunlight. You need to, you know, sleep well. You need to go out and move and walk and stretch and lift and do all these different things. You know, God forbid you're watching porn. Please do not watch porn ever at all for any circumstances. You know, getting rid of some of these substances and removing the crutches. But I don't want to like, that stuff's pretty surface level. If you are interested in that, you know, follow SolBrah. If you're not, you probably already do because he's the man. But one thing I would love to know is like, you know, you're at this point where you're super diced out, like really healthy. Like, what are you working on in your training? Like, what's the next conquest in your physical pursuits? What are you working on? I would love to hear that.
Yeah, so mobility is my main focus right now. Upper body, I'm still doing pretty traditional bodybuilding workouts.
Okay.
Supersetting a lot of stuff. And, you know, I have relatively good shoulder flexibility. You can do handstands and have no pain whatsoever there. But I've had hip pain / lower back pain on and off the last year or so. So it's chronic at that point. And what I've discovered is that it's as a result of, you know, years of sitting in a chair at school, wearing tight school shoes, and towards the later end of my school career and up until now is lifting weights, traditionally like squats and deadlifts. And those movements, while they have their place, when done consistently over years, while also sitting in a chair all the time, while not walking enough, while not doing counteracting decompression mobility exercises, what happens is your spine's going to be compressed. And for me, spine was compressed and I had a bit of disc prolapse, where your disc kind of pops a little bit out of your spine. Not a lot, but enough to hit the nerves, shorten the nerves, and cause the nerve pain, which I was experiencing. And at one point, it got so bad that I couldn't even sleep. I remember, you know, earlier this year being in so much pain that I couldn't sleep. I remember like literally crying in my bed in the middle of the night, just being like, please, something like help me with this pain. And I was researching, you know, back pain exercises, the McGill exercises. There's a lot of good things out there which enable, you know, the spine to move and that decompression to occur. And thank God it got better, where now I can sleep, whatever. But now I'm investigating go-to movements, decompressive exercises. My lower body training is completely changed. I don't do deadlifts. I don't do traditional squats anymore because when I do, I don't do hip thrusts either, because that's going to bring you into what they call the front chain, where your hips are in front of, if you're standing in front of your, and even sitting here, like you can see my hips up in front when really it should be kind of up like this for the most part of your resting posture.
Yeah.
But that whole journey and that investigation into what's the best way for me to rest, train, and fix this mobility issue that I've had to the point where I can sit in a squat like, third world squat without any troubles and pains. I can't do it with flat feet. I can do it relatively close, but not, to the point that I should. And it's really, a glaring weakness in my whole healthy living kind of thing. Whilst I don't really have much pain if I'm on top of doing my mobility exercises, getting into the back chain, strengthening, in that position a lot of the time. But that's my main focus right now. And I think it's something that's woefully under talked about, especially in the just get big bodybuilding world, which
for sure.
I'd considered. And everyone said, oh, squats and deadlifts won't, they're fine. And if you do them the right way, and if you're also having decompression exercise all of the time, like you squat and deadlift heavy, but you are also very knowledgeable about how to be in the back chain a lot. And remember when you deadlifted on the beach and you did fuck yourself up? That doesn't happen when you're doing decompression exercises. So why don't you go into the principles and like how you think about with the weightlifting balance?
Yeah, I think that day I had my little thing tweak is number one, like probably, we had an 8 a.m. thing or 9 a.m. thing. I was probably up late, or I was up late.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact I was up late and not sleeping well enough to get up.
Didn't you fail it and then you tried it again?
I failed it. I tried it again, and it wasn't super, super heavy. It was like 455. We've talked about it on the pod too. So not super heavy relative to what I've done in the past. I've deadlifted 100 more pounds than that. Yeah. But to me, it was like more so just doing that without a bunch of food, without a bunch of sleep. Like to me, the injuries, because it's, I obviously cover a lot of this stuff and what I do with my fitness company, Untapped Athlete, and what I kind of preach and the way that I think about these things is like, I don't think that, like, I never want to tell someone, like, because to me, doing the action is more important than someone not doing the action. Like, and I think for the vast majority of people, squats and deadlifts are a great tool for them to utilize the biggest muscle in their body, create a metabolic response that's going to facilitate them being healthy. And I never want to discourage that. And I also think too, I have tons of respect for the GOTA guys and everything that they do. It's helped me. And when I found them, it connected a ton of dots in terms of like what things I had been finding in my own mobility. I had gotten super strong throughout high school, college, etc., playing football. Like I had all the big bodybuilding numbers. I was, relatively fucking yoked, but I had all these little pains. And so to me, it was like the culmination of all of these different concepts, working and learning from the ATG guys or Knees Over Toes guy or Jeff, who we're going to do a pod with in October sometime. And so to me, it's like, I look at all of these things as tools. And I don't think that, just because you need a Phillips head screwdriver, maybe in a situation, like maybe the Phillips head screwdriver is the decompressive back chain, opening up your hips, elongating your spine, doing those things. Just because you need that screwdriver at a certain point in time, I don't think you get rid of the jackhammer, Yeah. And so to me, I always think about, they're pretty extremist to some sense.
That's one thing I've seen too.
That people should never do it. Like I will and am able to do all of these things. And for me, a lot of like the injury, because this is maybe I think the biggest asset that I provide to a lot of the people that I work with is like getting them in a position to where everything just feels good. Because if they can feel good in terms of their joints and how they're moving and all these things, then they can go as hard as they want repetitively, because the consistency is what's going to yield for them, Yeah. And so I just look at it as like a tool and use it to, I want to build my body in a way that is resilient to anything, and I can handle any circumstance that I want to put on it. And I think the same thing about, like my internal health and my nutrition, and barring, like for me now, the big thing with my training is just basically getting out of my own way with these little stints of like, like the Vegas trip, like if I remove that stuff and really just hard line, and this is why I respect you so much with all this stuff, because you have that like cutthroat consistency. And if I know that if I can add that in, that's the angle.
Next level.
I want to touch on the point of the traditional bodybuilding training, because I also think that crosses over into nutrition a lot. Where, like, because when I started working out, I was 17. I just wanted to get big, right? I was like super skinny,
as we all did,
high school or whatever. And it was the high protein bread and get the protein pre-workout and your BCAAs and all this different stuff, and you got to eat your rice and chicken and whatever. And I've talked about this in the podcast before. I was just eating for like volume at that point, and it really messed up my stomach.
Yeah.
Messed up my stomach. Acne was super, super bad all over my forehead. And it took a couple years to like come out, but it really like got bad. And that's when I kind of like pulled back from it a little bit. And like started like, what's actually happening here? And I really took a look at it. And I was like, I was just following the traditional bodybuilder like game plan of like eat as much as you can, even though it's dog shit, it's garbage. Yeah. Right? It's just like low quality stuff, but it's macros, you know?
Yeah.
Get your protein, get your carbs, get your fat, hit your macros, whatever, and that's what's gonna do it. And you see these guys eating like gummies and all these processed like foods and like stuff like that. So to me on that end, it's like, all right, get big, but get big doing like eating the things that are like actually going to keep you like internally healthy for many years to come. And that's why I'm kind of, you make fun of me sometimes like, oh, it's going to hurt your tummy. But I
it doesn't feel good. Who wants their tummy to hurt?
I'm super conscious of it just because like I was there once before. I had that, dude, I probably had like 100 pimples like all over my forehead. And I just don't want to go back to that.
And I also mess with Nick too about how he walks too. He's got like the duck.
It's gotten much better. Yeah. It's gotten much better. Yeah, we're working on it.
Need some work, but I mean,
on the traditional bodybuilder note, like.
Oh, you see, they got major duck feet. Those guys.
Yeah, because they're super tight and like you're I like that. But on that note, it's like, okay, bodybuilding is great for a certain point, to like a certain extent, like you get big, but then I think all these other things matter just as much, like even more.
Well,
right?
It's like they're not. The distinction is just like it's a lack of knowledge in the initial thing, and like they're not They're not what's the fucking word? They're not antagonists to each other. Like when you introduce the knowledge of micronutrients, raw foods, digestion, actually eating for nutrient quality, mineral supplementation, all of those things which aren't the traditional just like macros, lift, sleep, like all of that supports getting big. Like, because when you're your healthiest state, you've got your healthiest gut, your skin is good, your toxin removal system is good, you've got good mineralization, good hydration. Like all of that supports being your biggest self. And anyone that's doing the traditional bodybuilding like plan would value or would get a lot of value out of doing the stuff that's like less known and more of the stuff that I've really learned the last couple of years. So it's like,
or even, not on the nutrition side, like utilizing things like understanding how, rotation and decompression factors in or mobility.
How the body is supposed to move.
And like all those sort of more physical inputs too. I think people think about it as, I think the drawback too is that it seems like a lot of work, especially too, you can get, because there's, to me, I think that's the take, or like the thing that pulls people away from it is thinking that it has to be this like grand overhaul. And that's even why I don't necessarily support a message of like, never deadlift again. If someone's deadlifting and that's what they like and they're, they're getting physical results from it, I don't want to pull them out of things. I want all of this stuff to be additive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that it's, because we don't want to like you need to just like find ways to micro input these things so that they can then become habitual. And really that's like on all these levels, that's the message that, and I'm no saint. I have a lot of areas that I can improve on. I'm not the best at it in the world. But really helping people understand that you can foster this kinesthetic and, health awareness. Like you can malleate your genetics. You can change what you are fundamentally to a higher expression of that, both whether it's nutrition or the way you train and your lifestyle, disease. You don't have to be beholden to those things. And I think like that to me is like I like to become this great entrepreneur, and we're working on it, working hard, marketer, sales, whatever. But that to me is like the message that I want to get out to the world, that you can do anything. You can change into whatever you want to become. And it's I don't
It's
know.
our power as humans.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's a really beautiful thing.
All right.
Wow.
What do you reckon?
Yeah. How long we go for so far?
Can't tell.
I don't have my phone.
Probably a while. I guess this is kind of the last thing before we end the podcast. What's like any last words, any last like message that you want to leave for the associates? Last words for the associates. As you exit the podcast today.
Yeah, just be who you are, you know, like lean into what it is you value and treasure and love, because ultimately that's where the greatest reward will be in whatever it is you choose to do. And pursue that religiously and don't give a fuck about what anyone else thinks or tells you to do. Full stop.
Boom. We gonna go get
That's
a pump
amazing.
at motherfucking Gold's.
Episode
See you
11
there.
done.
Ciao.